On the last day of fourth grade, my best friend Dennis and I had planned to celebrate. Usually my mom would pick me up, but today seemed different. Dennis wasn't in my class this year, but we had been friends since kindergarten. After school, we lined up and waited at the exit of the hallway where Dennis's mom usually picked us up. As we waited, I heard a voice calling my name. "Tommy! Tommy!" I turned around and saw a man waving at me. He introduced himself as Dennis's uncle and said he was coming to pick me up. I felt something was wrong, but since I was young and didn't want to be a bother, I just told Miss Blue that I was going to go with this man. She nodded and let me go. He led me through the crowd, and I noticed that he spoke very quickly and seemed nervous. When we got to his car, I noticed something strange. Where was Dennis? Why didn't we pick Dennis up? The man replied that Dennis was already home. I felt awkward and suspicious, but didn't dare to say anything. The whole way, the man continued to talk, telling me about my elementary school days and asking me about my hobbies and studies. Although we only drove for about 10 minutes, it felt like an eternity. When he stopped the car in front of a strange house, I felt unsafe. He took me inside and closed the door, locking it. It was very dark inside, with only a dim desk lamp lighting up. I saw that the curtains were all drawn. The man told me to wait here for a moment, then went down to the basement. I felt nervous and decided to take action. I found a phone in the kitchen, picked it up and called 911, whispering, "Please come here, I'm being kidnapped." I hung up and hid the phone under a towel, then went back to where the man had left it. When he came back up, I heard the doorbell ring and a loud bang. It sounded like the police had arrived. I felt hopeful when I heard the noise, but I didn't know what he was doing. Then I heard heavy footsteps and people screaming. The basement door opened and a police officer took me outside. I saw several police cars parked outside. I told the police what had happened and was taken to safety. The man was arrested and put in a police car. When my parents arrived, my mother cried a lot. It turned out that this man was a co-worker of Dennis's father, and he had taken advantage of the opportunity to commit the crime. My mother and I attended psychological counseling for several months after the incident. Today, I have not seen that man again, and I don't know if he has been released from prison. I still feel lucky that I thought to call the police. It is a painful memory, but also a valuable lesson in vigilance and courage. The last day of 11th grade was stormy and overcast, causing many students to skip school or leave early after lunch. My group of close friends were among them. Our plan was to go to the beach, but the bad weather forced us to change our plans. Instead, we decided to explore an abandoned elementary school in the neighborhood. The school had been abandoned for about 10 years and was scheduled to be demolished at the end of the year. So we decided to break in and explore. My friend Eddie had a driver's license and drove his car to the school. The school was located in the middle of a residential area, off the main road, with a parking lot covered in trees and surrounded by walls. It was the perfect place to stay undetected. Eddie took a baseball bat from the trunk of his car and smashed a window. In the heavy rain, the sound of breaking glass could be heard from the surrounding houses, but we were still worried. After a few strong bangs, the windows were destroyed, and we crawled inside one by one. We entered an old classroom where the remaining tables, chairs, and decorations were still there. The atmosphere in the classroom was very gloomy, and the thunder outside added to the eerie feeling. Although there was no electricity, the light from the windows was enough for us to move. We started walking through the hallways, from classroom to classroom, and felt the desolation of the place. Suddenly, a sound echoed from the hallway, causing us to stop and turn off the flashlight on our phones. After a flash of lightning, we realized that it might just be the sound of the wind. We continued moving, but the strange sounds got closer and closer. As we approached a corner of the hallway, I turned around and saw something looming at the classroom door. I called my friends to help me look, and when we all shined our flashlights, the figure immediately retreated into the classroom. We panicked and ran quickly to the intersection of the hallway, where we stopped and entered a kindergarten classroom. Closing the door, we sat quietly, trying to keep quiet and listening to the sound of the wind and rain outside. Suddenly, the classroom door opened ominously, and a head-shaped figure appeared at the door. We tried to stay calm, but when there was another flash of lightning, we realized it was a head looking into the classroom. I started to apologize and said we would leave, but the person standing at the door did not move. Eddie asked if the person was a staff member here, but received no response. Eddie decided to act, handed me the stick, and started to open a window to get out. He got out first, followed by the other two friends, and I was the last one. When I looked back again, the head was still standing at the door. I quickly got out, feeling like the person was going to chase me and catch me. We ran back to Eddie's car, drove out of there quickly, and didn't look back. The school was then demolished and turned into a park. We weren't arrested by the police, and we don't know if the person there was a staff member or just a stranger. Either way, the behavior was extremely scary. When I was a freshman in college, I took a chemistry class. It was a tough class with desks arranged in groups of 4. I sat at a desk in the middle of the room, on the left side, near the end. Next to me was a guy named Zach. He seemed a bit strange, with a slightly overweight build and an uneven beard, like a Reddit admin. Still, Zach was really good at chemistry and seemed to study hard. We started chatting politely when Zach noticed I was struggling in class. He started helping me by doing my homework for me and letting me copy his tests. While I never felt anything romantic toward Zach, probably because he was too shy to show it, I still felt like I owed him for helping me maintain an A in the class. Finally, on the last day of class, Zach suddenly asked me out on a date. I had no feelings for Zach, and we were completely different personalities, but since he had helped me so much, I had to politely decline. I lied and said I was going to Miami for the next few weeks and wouldn't be able to see him. Zach immediately asked me when I would be back, and I felt like 2 weeks was long enough for him to forget. I replied that I would probably be there when I got back, and Zach responded with a creepy smile, which made me feel very uncomfortable. After class, I drove home quickly. That night, my friends and I went out drinking. While drunk, I told my friends about Zach and his date request. My friends joked that I should go on a date with him to show my gratitude, and I joked back. But because I was so drunk, I forgot to reply to Zach. The next day, I woke up to 2 more messages from Zach. The first message was just a question mark, and the second was, "Are you going to ignore me now that you don't need me anymore?" I replied apologetically because I was busy preparing for the Miami trip. Zach immediately responded with, "Okay," but the reality was that I never went to Miami. That night, when I got home and had just taken off my shoes, there was a knock on the door at 1 a.m. I asked who it was and heard Zach outside. He said, "It's me." I panicked and yelled through the door for him to leave, or I would call my dad out. At first, he didn't knock again. I called all my friends and family to tell them about the situation, and many advised me to call the police. I didn't call the police right away, but waited until the next morning when I received a long text message from Zach. The message was filled with anger and frustration, which I will read to you. Zach said he felt cheated and couldn't believe I had made up a trip to Miami to avoid dating him. He also expressed how hurt he was that I might have even the slightest interest in him. I texted all my friends and family about the scary message. My dad sent a long text and called Zach several times but got no response. The next day, I went to the police station to file a report and present Zach's message. The police said they would contact Zach, but he didn't return their calls or texts. Eventually, Zach disappeared completely. I never heard from him again. I never saw him return to school or anywhere. However, I did experience a real sense of being followed, and it was really scary.